Sorry, Dad.
Sorry doesn't make the noodles. What were you doing up there? All that noise?
Oh, nothing. Just, had a crazy dream.
About what?
Huh?
What were you dreaming about?
What was I was dreaming about, noodles.
Noodles?
Noodles are one of my favorite foods to make and eat, and I definitely don't have any dreams about them at night. But this recipe of Mian Pian is so simple to make, it's difficult not to think about it. Anywho, Mian Pian means noodle sheet in Chinese, and take it as you will, it's a pretty delicious recipe that's simple to make and quick to whip. First, we're going to combine all of our all-purpose flour with some water and then mix it to form a shaggy dough. We're going to use a fork here because it's just easier than using your hand. We're then going to use our hand to knead and then fill to cover it with plastic wrap and let rest for 30 minutes. Now we're going to start by finely dicing some garlic as well as rough quartering some tomatoes. This recipe really doesn't have any measurements or any set ingredients that you have to use. It's more just about going off a feel and getting the right taste. And I guess that's what's difficult about Chinese cooking in general. We're going to stick with the classics for me, which is just tomatoes and garlic and maybe some eggs. Anyways, we're going to start by lightly frying our garlic and then adding our tomatoes. This step allows us to develop some toasted notes to our end broth, which I like quite personally. Although there's no meat in this recipe, the tomatoes addition adds some meatiness to the broth because it contains MSG, which is surprising to some, but still pretty tasty. In this step, you can add other toppings such as onions, maybe some carrots, and if you like, also some minced pork and beef, but I like to keep it a bit vegetarian because it's just classic to me. Once we give the tomatoes, in this case, a light frying and let it release its juices, we're going to add some light soy. Dark soy is a bit too intense, but light soy still adds a nice saltiness to it. Once we give that a nice caramelization, add enough water for all the tomatoes to float up, and then we're ready to cover it and let it boil. The boiling step lets it kind of marinate a bit, and in this step you could also add yourself some poached eggs. Just really what you're feeling. Now as our stock is boiling, we can meanwhile flour our surface to roll out our dough. For this step you can roll it out to any thickness you like. It just really depends on what type of noodles you like, whether it be chewy or would it be thin and very mushy, I guess, so maybe keep it a bit thicker. Because this dough has rested for about 30 minutes, it should be quite supple and soft as it is the French term autolyse, which is quite pretentious, I know. So for me, I like it quite thick, so about 3 millimeters in thickness. I actually don't measure it out with a ruler or a caliper or whatever you use to measure thickness. And I just go for generally what I feel is right. Now we're going to cut our dough into strips and we're going to let it rest so it doesn't really stick to the surface. The point of us cutting it like this is to make it easier for us to rip the noodles in the next step. It's fine if there's some straggly bits left behind. Once the broth has come to a boil, we can add our noodles by ripping it into the broth. I'm not sure why we have to hand rip it, but it's something my grandmother told me I must do, so it's a question for next time. We're going to cook these noodles for quite a short amount of time, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, because fresh noodles don't really take longer, as the Italians would tell you also. While the broth is cooking, we can add other accoutrements such as sesame oil. I also think the sesame oil brings a nice taste to the broth. Once we're done cooking, we can ladle it into a shallow bowl, as is customary to me, and maybe add other things if you like. I like adding Chinese black vinegar because I'm quite a big fan of sour tasting foods.